Donald Trump has delivered his address to the UN General Assembly, outlining his vision for the world. And that vision, it seems, is currently dominated by Iran, with the president warning the international community against supporting what he called a dictatorship regime. Iran's leadership, though, did not hesitate in punching back, as RT's Ilya Petrenko now reports from New York.
The first punches were thrown by the two presidents here at the UN HQ on Tuesday. Trump and Rouhani's speeches were only a couple of hours apart.
Iran's leaders sow chaos, death, and destruction.
The United States' understanding of international relations is authoritarian.
The corrupt dictatorship in Iran.
Enemies of peace and the perpetrators of war.
Plunder the nation's resources to enrich themselves.
Unlawful unilateral sanctions in themselves constitute a form of economic terrorism.
Donald Trump loathed the Iran nuclear deal struck under his predecessor, Obama. According to the U.S. president's version of events, the Iranian government exploited the agreements to dodge sanctions, continue fooling its people, and expanding its toxic influence in the region. Plus, Donald Trump is a big fan of sanctions on Iran. Tehran is blaming Washington for treating agreements like rubbish. They're not rolling out coming back to their nuclear program as part of their measures in response. Anyway, Washington is clearly on a mission to teach Iran a lesson this week in New York. The top men in charge of the American foreign policy, their national security advisor, and the Secretary of State are hopping from one event to another, making open threats against Tehran and warning anyone who dares to deal or even talk with them.
We must put pressure on the regime to rein in its destruction and demand that Iran act like a normal country.
If you cross us, our allies, or our partners, if you harm our citizens, if you continue to lie, cheat, and deceive, yes, there will indeed be hell to pay.
The language war continues right behind these doors, where Donald Trump is chairing a UN Security Council meeting on Iran on Wednesday. Previously, a U.S. president has only done it twice, and there's barely any doubt that Mr. Trump will be trying to convince the rest of the world that Iran has close links with terrorists, just like in his main General Assembly speech.
Finance terrorism and fund havoc and slaughter.
In Iran, we condemn all acts of terrorism without equivocation.
I think Trump is playing a game where everyone is wrong, everyone is bad, everyone is ripping America off, and only Trump is right. But really, America is essentially the empire. It controls or attempts to control a large amount of the world. When any country decides to be independent, to do something for themselves, and if America feels this is not right, then immediately they become, the enemy. They become terrorists. This is a threat. This is a threat. Do not oppose me.
As mentioned, Iran will again come under discussion at the Security Council. That will be today. We will be following all the updates on that. Meanwhile, though, we did take to the streets of Tehran to get reaction to what's been said at the UN.
What Trump said at the UN about supporting the Iranian nation is a sheer lie, because if it really were so, they would not have quit the JCPOA. The fact he quit an international agreement which the US government itself had signed before shows that his words cannot be trusted, and we can never trust the US or hold talks with them.
Assessing Trump's speech, any sane person, even a child, can understand that it's contradictory. On the one hand, he puts pressure on people, yet on the other, he says he supports the Iranian nation. Well, this demonstrates he's a liar.
I believe renegotiation with the US is needed, because it will lead to the fulfillment of our demands. I think it would be helpful if we can reach an agreement with the US.
Generally, they have never been friends with us, and they have never cared about Iran. Now will they?
It seems, though, that this year Iran has taken the place of another U.S. enemy, which claimed much of Trump's attention during last year's address.
The corrupt dictatorship in Iran, the depraved regime in North Korea. We cannot allow the world's leading sponsor of terrorism. This band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons to possess the planet's most dangerous weapons. It is time for all nations to work together to isolate the Kim regime. We ask all nations to isolate Iran's regime.